Sean Murray had explicitly said multiple times that No Man's Sky is not trying to be a game like Destiny. It's not trying to be sort of an MMO space game. And it's really interesting, the way that No Man's Sky has played out. Obviously, there's been a lot of negativity towards it. I could really make an entire separate video about it. I probably will. But we recently just had something interesting happen. The Destiny design head talked about the No Man's Sky procedural generation and UI aesthetics. And needless to say, he threw some shade, guys. It was pretty interesting. So in an interview with Metro, Destiny's world design lead Steve Cotton opened up about No Man's Sky. So the interview was actually supposed to be about the upcoming Destiny expansion pack called Rise of Iron, but it quickly took a turn as some of the questions started asking Cotton about his stance on No Man's Sky. Obviously, No Man's Sky is pretty controversial right now. Cotton was actually very familiar with No Man's Sky and all of the issues that have plagued it, and he actually was very opinionated about No Man's Sky. So he basically gave Bungie's stance as a studio, and he basically said that Bungie refuses to take the procedural generation route because, according to Cotton, procedural generation is not the most effective way to make a video game in the sense that you can't predict the gameplay that's going to happen, and therefore you can't create meaningful experiences. When you have a team of designers handcraft a world, you're able to make meaningful experiences because you know that it is a specific world, a specific environment that every player will be in, and you can specifically design things for those players. Whereas when you pursue procedural generation, you don't necessarily know what's going to happen with the players, and it's not as easy to create gameplay elements that are consistent across the entire universe. It was really interesting to me. Cotton sort of described procedural generation as good for creating real estate, but not for memorable moments. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to put it. So procedural generation is able to create things like a massive universe with 18 quintillion planets, such as that of No Man's Sky. But what it lacks, at least right now, is the ability to create memorable moments. One of the biggest concerns with No Man's Sky right now, one of the biggest criticisms, is that it gets boring, and that the game itself lacks a lot of depth. It's a very expansive game in terms of actual scope, like there is a massive universe to explore and you can technically keep exploring it, but there isn't much depth to it. Everything is kind of based on the same palette of colors, the same couple, body parts that are mixed and matched in different ways to put on animals. It becomes very predictable at times. What Cotton is basically arguing is that procedural generation is not effective right now because it lacks in its ability to create diverse environments. What do I think about this? I'm a little bit torn in the sense that I absolutely agree with Cotton. Procedural generation right now, the technology just is not there. We just don't have it developed enough to the point that we can create procedurally generated worlds or universes, for example, that have enough depth to create actual gameplay. We definitely have the capabilities to create procedurally generated stuff that is just good for walking through and experiencing in a relaxing way. Like No Man's Sky, it lacks gameplay, but it is a foundation from which you can just go about and explore and do whatever you want. It's a very chill game. So while I do agree with the fact that procedural generation is not quite where it needs to be at this point, I do believe that procedural generation does have a future in gaming if developers can figure out how to implement gameplay. So yeah, I do think that what Cotton is saying is true in the status quo, but I disagree with Cotton in the sense that I don't believe that we should just discount procedural generation entirely for the future of gaming, that it's just something that we should just not continue to pursue at all. In my opinion, No Man's Sky is a great frame for a game. The framework of a good game is there, but it's just not polished, and there isn't enough depth yet. And I think maybe through updates that can be fixed. But as Cotton said, there just aren't memorable moments, and those need to be delivered for No Man's Sky to justify procedural generation for other developers and for the future of gaming in general. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and a comment, and if you really enjoyed it, make sure to subscribe. My name is Wumbo. I'll see you next time.